I like the idea of doing something different. Okay, this is what I want to do, put everything into it. It wasn't really the path I wanted to go down. I knew I didn't want to go to uni or do any sort of tertiary education. We got to year 12, finished my HSC. Don't really want to be a chef. What can I sort of look at doing? And that's when I sort of trialed to be a fireman.
I didn't end up working in a wood fire restaurant, you know?
Then as soon as I had the idea of becoming a chef, that's sort of like when all my energy and focus, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to like put everything into it. So that's sort of like when I decided to take my apprenticeship.
I do want to start with kind of a background, right, before you became a chef. So give me a bit of an understanding of what life was like growing up. Maybe some key moments that kind of really describe who you are before we get into coming into kitchens, I suppose, if you want to lay that down for us.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I had a fairly normal childhood, I think. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm one of two brothers, the youngest. So obviously the youngest always cops the most shit. But it was, so am I allowed to swear in this?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I have a bit of a potty mouth, so I'll just try to...
Go for gold, mate.
Yeah. I will try to get... My parents will probably watch this, so I will keep it down.
Oh, come on.
But yeah, listen, I had a completely normal childhood. You know, we grew up in a sort of middle-class family. You know, very loving, nurturing parents.
Yeah.
Food was always... I wouldn't say it was like a massive thing in our household. Like, you know, we didn't make passata once a year or any of those sort of big classic Italian traditions, but, you know, food was quite an important thing where we all sort of sat down for dinner. You know, my mum was a fantastic cook. Obviously she's Italian my parents are Italian background. She was, yeah, I just remember being a child and always looking forward to dinner. I was a great eater. It was just, you know, I was, just normal, man. Like, I loved hanging out, playing with my friends. Yeah. You know, me and my brother always get up to mischief. I got along with my middle brother, who was only 3 years older. You know, we'd always like run around the streets, play in the drains, do knock and run, like all those sort of classic mischief things that I used to do as young kid before social media was around. Yeah. But yeah, it was just loving household. Yeah. It was good.
Coming into like early high school, did you have maybe some kind of early dreams of where you wanted to do or where you wanted to go? So
I always really enjoyed cooking. Going back to my mum being a great cook, I remember being young and sort of always, you know, being interested to what she was doing in the kitchen. You know, I was sort of helpful with some things, like, you know, playing, you know, picking parsley or doing, you know, very copy-based jobs in the kitchen. I do remember, you know, when my mum went to Italy. So she went on a holiday with one of her friends, and I can't remember how old I was. I probably would have been, you know, maybe 13 to 15 years old. And my dad, who can't even fry an egg, you know, I basically became the cook for that period. She was gone for maybe like 5 to 6 weeks. So I was cooking the dinners, and obviously my mum did a lot of preparation beforehand. You know, she made a lot of like frozen meals that were in the freezer. But in that time, you know, I was cooking for my family. When I say cooking, you know, reheating things and, you know, you say pan frying some chicken or making very basic pastas. I just really enjoyed it, and like, I guess that sort of maybe started my appreciation for food and thinking like, you know, this is something I quite enjoy doing. But it just sort of became one of those things that, you know, every time she was in the kitchen, I would just sort of gravitate towards it and just sort of suss out what she was doing. I remember she bought me, I've still actually got the cookbook at home. It's like kids' first cookbook. And there was like you know, a pancake recipe, sweet corn fritters, scrambled egg recipe. I don't really need a recipe for scrambled eggs, but there was a scrambled egg recipe. And I just remember cooking everything from that book and like being really, just enjoying the process, like looking at these ingredients. Okay, I've got all these ingredients in front of me, and I don't know, just something about it clicked, and I really enjoyed it.
It's nice to have these kind of fundamental memories, you know, before you started. So kind of coming into mid-high school, you jump on at the Black Stump, right? Which is kind of your first role.
That's right, yeah.
But you were at KP, you weren't necessarily cooking.
That's correct. So it was, I mean, what's the legal working age? 14, 9 months, whatever it was. So as soon as I was 14, 9 months, like I wanted to find work. So like obviously coming back from a the family background of like instilling a strong work ethic, and my parents always, you know, obviously they gave me pocket money. They weren't like the Grinch or anything, but they instilled the value of like, you know, if you want to buy things or buy your own things, you know, you gotta start working to earn money, and you know, you can buy whatever you want. So as soon as I was 14, 9 months, you know, I was hungry to work and start earning my own money, and you know, buy little flash clothes or whatever 14-year-olds buy. I can't remember. And I, like everyone at that sort of age, you know, the place you go work is either McDonald's or KFC. So I actually applied to both of those places and didn't get the job from either. And I was like, okay, shit. But right next to my house, there was a Black Stump chaga, which is like obviously no longer around. It was just a franchise of steakhouses. So I just applied, rocked up to the door, wrote a letter and just said, listen, I'm looking for kitchen hand work. Gave them a letter, talked about who I am. And they said, come in for a trial, and I did the trial, and next thing I knew, I was working there. And it was, I guess part of the reason why I wanted to do it was obviously I did have a sort of interest in food based on the experiences I had with my mum. But it was more so, I liked the idea of doing something different, because obviously all my friends were either working at McDonald's or KFC. A few of them worked at like Franklin's or Woolies, doing like packing shelves. But for me to go work at the Black Stump as a kitchen hand was like unheard of for my year group or people who were working. So I really enjoyed the fact that I was different in that sense and like doing something different. And funnily enough, I ended up getting maybe 3 or 4 of my friends at different times jobs at the Black Stump as well, doing the same thing.
How funny.
Some were kitchen hands, others were like just waitresses running food. But yeah, I ended up getting some people a job there too.
How funny. Yeah, I remember my first job, my older brother got me a job at Red Rooster at 14, 9 months, and no one I knew worked at Red Rooster, but I remember getting bullied so much, man. I don't know why Red Rooster, it's like the Nickelback of fast food.
Because it's Red Rooster, that's why. Definitely it's on the lower end of the spectrum for fast food
bullshit.
places.
But it was good, it's nice, but especially that young, you know, like, I don't know what it is, but it also really teaches you at that age to appreciate working even just for the, whatever, $60 you got a week or $80 you got a week. I was getting paid like $8 when I was 14 months at that place, man. It was a long time ago.
I remember I was under $5. I can't remember exactly what I got. It was under $5.
It's like nothing.
But still, like, when you live at home and you're earning like that whatever that amount of money was, it's still money that you're completely saving every single dollar. And because you're such at the lower end, you weren't getting taxed much, so everything, you know, you pretty much got back. And I just remember like actually I remember saving quite a bit of money doing that. Even though I was still spending money, I was actually saving quite a bit of money as well.
But I love that. Like, just being able to start that idea of saving and being able to afford things that you couldn't do before. It was a strange sense of like
freedom. Sense of freedom, like, you know, being able to just, especially when I was of the age of being able to like just go out and do my own thing on the weekend and stuff like that, and not having to get like my mum to drop me off at my friend's house sort of thing. Like, you know, I could just make plans to go to the movies with my friends, and like, you know, I could walk to the train station, get the train there, pay for my own money, pay the movie ticket with my own money, just sort of like this sort of thing of like becoming a part of society, you know, sort of implementing yourself in the world.
It was nice, huh?
Good feeling.
Were there any other lessons you learned early on? Because I know a first place can be very pivotal.
It definitely opened up my eyes. Listen, I worked there. When I got there, I didn't have any intention like, okay, I want to be a chef, or this is the industry I want to be in. It was just purely a job. But when I was there, I really, surprisingly, I really enjoyed that environment. Listen, it was obviously, in terms of restaurants, especially the restaurants I work in now, it's a very different end of the spectrum of what I currently know as a chef. Like, I mean, listen, not to badmouth the place. I mean, it's not there, and it's not there for a reason, obviously. But it's obviously everything was bought in, all the sauces were bought in. You know, like just all the salad dressings were bought in. You know, we buying mescaline mix, like just everything was just bought in. And you know, they did it to run an efficient sort of businesses. I think there was at least maybe 10 to 12 different other franchises. So they had a head office where they produced everything and then spread out to the other restaurants. So all your steaks came in pre-portioned, ice skins came in brought in. So you weren't really doing much cooking. you're sort of just opening packages and, you know, plating what they brought.
Yep.
But like, I guess that experience really opened up my eyes to what hospitality or what restaurants could be like. I vividly remember, particularly when I started cooking, so obviously I was doing the kitchen and work at first, but when I started cooking or like doing the, you know, working on the larder, doing salads, and
Sure.
I just loved the whole structure of how things were working, and I just enjoyed the rush of service. I vividly remember the adrenaline of service, like just really excited me. And you know, I think that's sort of where the idea of first working in restaurants first came about, but it wasn't to the point of like, this is what I wanted to do. It just sort of sparked the idea of, you know, this is a potential career path.
Yeah. Obviously, at some point, you switched from the Black Stump to the Cass.
Yes.
Was that a decision that cemented that you wanted to be a chef, or was there other decision behind that?
So, listen, I was at the Black Stump until I was end of high school. You know, I was there, yeah, I think I was maybe 18 or just before 18 when I left.
Yeah.
When I left, I sort of didn't really want to do hospitality. It's quite funny.
Oh, okay.
So it's probably going a bit back and forth, but when I finished I was coming up to year 10.
Yeah.
At that time, I was still working at Black Stump and I was cooking on the grill. So it's quite funny because I sort of progressed through that sort of scenario really quickly. I think I was there for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
But I progressed through that, not intentionally, it just sort of happened where I started off as pot wash and I had no intention of cooking, but in 2 years' time, I was a 16, 17-year-old cooking on the main grill, like cooking all the steaks. And I guess for me, in terms of like, oh, you know, this is actually something I'm quite naturally good at. So I knew that I was considering that as a career path. And I remember saying to my parents, like, you know, I want to drop out of school because I really wasn't. Listen, I enjoyed school. I think what I enjoyed most about school was the hanging around with my mates and fucking around, that sort of, that's like in terms of being academic, and it wasn't really the path I wanted to go down. I knew I didn't want to go to uni or do any sort of tertiary education. So I wanted to drop out at year 10 and start my apprenticeship, but my parents were like fully against it. And they're like, no, you got to finish your HSC. You know, they were insistent that I needed to finish high school because they said, you know, obviously they're looking at the bigger picture. You know, I could be a chef now, but in 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5 years time, you know, you want to change careers, you've got no education, and you're like, you know, you're.
That's bullshit.
So they insisted I finish school, and in years 11 and 12, that was obviously becoming a young man and teenager. You know, you started going out, started drinking, and that's when I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be a chef. I want to go out on the weekends. I want to be able to hang out with my friends. And I knew through working at the Black Stump and doing a few work experience things through school that, you know, looking back at it, like the chefs are like, oh, you know, don't become a chef because, you know, you're not going to have a social life. You're going to work for your friends' birthdays. You're going to work weekends. And that sort of like kind of put me off. And I really enjoyed hanging out with my friends, so to speak. So I didn't really want to be a chef at that sort of like year 11 and 12. So I started looking at other options. Yeah. And yeah, just sort of, we got to year 12 and decided that, you know, I've finished my HSC, don't really want to be a chef, what can I sort of look at doing? And that's when I sort of trialed to be a fireman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hey, very good.
Yeah, you didn't find out when you did your background check. So I tried out to be a fireman actually. Wow. And fortunately, looking back at it, I didn't get in. I got to the psychological, I did a few stages.
How did they trial the stage?
So you do, I mean, there's a series of tests that you have to do, and obviously each time you do a test, you know, they cull a huge amount. I can't remember the statistics, but I do remember it being a very small window of people that get through. Wow. They only select like a handful of people, and like they have thousands of people who apply, but only a small select people get through. So there's a series of like tests and interviews that you do. I think I got to the third round, like a psychological test that I did, and then obviously I just didn't get past that stage. So that whole idea of becoming a fireman was gone, and then I was like, all right, well, what do I do?
Did you even get slide down the pole?
I didn't get slide down the pole. I didn't get to do the physical, which is probably a good thing, so I don't know if I was fit enough. Even though I was training, I was like doing the BIP test and running around doing push-ups, all that sort of stuff. I was weight training, so I felt like I would have been okay to do it past that stage, but I never got to that stage. But yeah, so I got to the point of like, okay, well, I didn't get through this. What do I want to do with my life? I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll just fall back to chefing. So that's when I started my apprenticeship.
How different the world would be, huh?
I know.
You might be on a calendar somewhere one day.
Mate, I think I'll look good in like some yellow overalls as well, to be honest.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what it was about being a firefighter. I guess it's just the whole novelty of it. I just really enjoyed maybe it goes back to the whole adrenaline thing.
Sure.
Obviously being a firefighter in those sort of scenarios and situations can be, quite adrenaline inducing. So maybe that could be part of it. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, right. I suppose I didn't end up working in a wood fire restaurant.
No, well, but then as soon as I had the idea of becoming a chef, that's sort of like when all my energy and focus, like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Okay.
I'm going to like put everything into it. So that's sort of like when I decided to take my apprenticeship.
At the CAS?
No, at the Summit actually. So
sorry.
My apprenticeship at the Summit.
Was before the CAS.
So yes.
I read that wrong.
So the Summit was where I started my apprenticeship.
Okay.
And the reason why I did my apprenticeship there was, so in year 10 we had the option of doing work experience, and you got to choose a restaurant that you wanted to work at. Obviously you had to go through a whole application process. And I didn't know anything about restaurants back then. Obviously the hat system existed, but I had no idea what it was or what it meant. So I chose the Summit thinking that it was the best restaurant because it was so high up and it revolved. That was my whole reason. They get best restaurant in Australia.
Yeah.
And I think my parents had heard of it, and again, they probably heard of it for the same reasons. I mean, listen, it was a bit of a touristy sort of place to be.
Totally.
So we just assumed, I like to blame my parents as well, collectively, that we thought it was the best restaurant in Australia, so that's where I decided to go. I did my work experience there. And I really quite enjoyed it. So when it came to doing my apprenticeship, I do remember them offering me apprenticeship at that time.
Yeah.
But obviously, because of what my parents had said, I turned it down or declined it. But then I just reopened the conversation saying, listen, I did my work experience there 2 years ago. You offered me a job, but the timing wasn't right. I'm here now, ready to work. And then, I worked there for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. It was definitely a good restaurant to start in. Obviously we'll go into it a bit later, but if I started in a restaurant like Bacchus, I feel like there could have been a strong chance a place like that would have ruined me. It would have put me off being a chef, and I would have done it for maybe if I would have lasted 2 months, I probably would have done it for 2 months and then said, oh, this is too hard. Being a chef isn't for me.
Sure.
But it was a great restaurant to start in, for sure. There were a lot of systems in place. They sort of taught me, or I guess it was the first time I sort of saw how a whole brigade works, because all I sort of knew of restaurants back then was what was at the Black Stump, and I mean the Black Stump pretty much had the grill section, a larder section, I guess, which sort of looked after pretty much the deep frying of the chips, the pre-made salads, and pre-made ice creams. And that was it. So there was no real sort of sections or hierarchy in the kitchen. So walking into the Summit sort of showed me all that. And I guess I really sort of loved how the brigade system worked. It was quite full on there in terms of they had like a hot entrees, a cold entrees. They had a pastry section. They had a grill. They had a garnish. They had a wok section. They had a deep fryer section. So there was all these sort of different aspects of the kitchen, which I sort of was a massive eye-opener to me.
And was it at the Summit you're working under Chef Adam?
No, that was at Yellow. Adam Wolfers?
Oh no, I thought it might have been the Summit. I thought it might have been the Summit. I don't
remember Adam at the Summit. The head chef there was a chef called Jess Ong when I first started, and then it turned into a chef called David Greenhill.
Okay, maybe it was Dave.
English fellow,
because I remember reading about a chef. You were chatting about a chef and about kind of his, I guess, influence, or I guess his kind of early. I guess you learnt a lot from them in a very fundamental way from them, especially being this kind of new restaurant to you, at least, like this very kind of structured, this very influential in terms of your understanding of restaurants and their place in the world through hats and so forth. And I remember reading about about his influence on you. Do Do you still have kind of many memories or lessons that you learned from that kind of core experience?
So the main thing I remember from the summit, or the thing I could take away from there, is like it was a nurturing kitchen. Don't get me wrong, there was, heated moments during service, but it really sort of taught me the values of like being ready for service, the importance of mise en place, all these sort of basic fundamental things that you sort of learn as a cook that you won't learn at TAFE.
Totally.
I guess for me as well, like being able to do all the different sections there. I mean, I was there for 2.5 years, which was, I guess, quite a long time in apprentice terms, only purely because I wanted to see every aspect of that kitchen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just really got along with, it was a big team as well, a massive team. Like, I can't remember, there would have been at least 20 plus chefs, 20 to 25 chefs.
Oh, wow.
We all got along. We all went out for drinks after work. It was just like a nice, nurturing environment. It really was.
And is this the location of this? Is this at Centre Point?
No, so it's Australia Square. So now it's called O-Bar and Dining.
Oh, O-Bar.
O-Bar.
Oh shit! Yeah, I know O-Bar. Oh wow, that was there.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy. Oh Jesus, there you go. It's pretty fancy, huh?
Yeah, so
very fancy.
Well, mate,
not too far from serious,
360 views of the Sydney skyline. Like for me, that was like, how much more can you get? In terms of better restaurants,
So it was after the summit then you went to Cass?
It was. So
on Clarence.
Correct.
Yes.
That's right. So it was probably I was there for about 2 years, and I think at that stage I started realizing about sort of kitchens, I started realizing about the hats. And I vividly remember, so there was this chef called Connor, who was another apprentice who came from Melbourne, I think, and him and I got along really well because, there was quite a few apprentices there. I feel like, there would have been at least 5 or 6 different apprentices, and, I felt like I was quite naturally, I came to cooking quite naturally, so, I felt like I was on the higher end of the apprentices in terms of like the responsibilities that I was getting and the sections that I was on. And then Connor came along and he was actually quite a competent chef as well. So we both got along quite well. We used to go back to his house and hang out after work and do things, which I probably won't say. But he really opened up my eye to what the fine dining world is of restaurants.
Yeah.
It is very cliche. He actually gave me when he went off to overseas, he gave me his French Laundry cookbook.
Oh wow!
And I started looking through the French Laundry. I never even heard of the French Laundry, because this is before the days of social media and and you can't just jump online and Google Michelin-starred restaurants. Like you had to hear through word of mouth or magazines or whatever it may be. So he really opened up my eyes to what fine dining was. We used to talk. We'd go out for drinks after work, get drunk, but we would work 15 hours a day with each other.
Yeah.
And then we'd finish work, and then just talk about restaurants. Totally. While we're drinking. We'd talk about all the good restaurants. We just lived and breathed hospitality in restaurants.
Yeah.
So we got talking, and he was the one that sort of told me about all the hats and all that sort of stuff, and he knew that I was moving on, and we started discussing about restaurants where I wanted to work, and then I started doing my research, and I can't remember, it was my time to move on. I was there at that stage about 2 years, and I knew that I wanted to, challenge myself. So there were 5 restaurants. I can't remember who they were. I remember one was Mark, Rockpool, the other one was Bacass. I can't remember what the other 2, I think maybe Bilson's maybe. I can't remember what the other one would have been, but there was a selection of 5 restaurants that I applied for, all of them. And I can't remember if I heard back from any of them, to be honest. But I do remember Michael Moore, who was the executive chef of the summit. He was like, stay with me for another 6 months. This is a busy period. Stay with me for the other 6 months, and then I'll help you get your foot into the door in one of those restaurants. I ended up choosing Bacass because I sort of really, I guess, from looking at the book and what they were doing, I really sort of started enjoying the whole using the whole animals. They love doing the whole sort of nose to tail thing. Cooking with offal was one thing that I really enjoyed about what they're doing, and that whole French English, the Franglish sort of movement that was sort of quite popular back then. I felt like they were leading the forefront, because obviously there was all these bank boys that ventured off to do their own thing. But in my eyes, Picasso was the one that was sort of like leading the frontier in terms of doing that sort of stuff. So I was set in my mind that I wanted to go work there, not really knowing of what that restaurant was like, but I knew that I really wanted to go work there. Michael stood by his word. I don't know what he did, whether he emailed, contacted, wrote a letter, I'm not too sure, but he got my foot in the door at Picasso. Did a trial, again, I can't remember parts of the trial, but what I do remember it just sort of being like a very eye-opening experience. I do remember it being super chaotic, which I enjoyed. But it was just sort of like, okay, this is where I need to work. And thankfully I got the job, did my time at the summit, my notice period, and then started at Picasso the following week.
So what time frame was this that you started at Picasso?
I would have been third year apprentice, and probably I would have been 20 years old.
Okay. And what year roughly?
2007.
Okay.
I think 2007, because I started my apprenticeship in 2004.
Yep.
So around that sort of period.
Yeah. And Picasso's became this kind of really first kind of crazy restaurant.
It was, man.
It was the standards.
It was, I just remember, so coming from the summit, listen, like I was saying before, I went into Picasso quite cocky, because at the summit I was like
always the worst.
I was a glory child. Obviously I exceeded. I did really well there, and I got I was super tight with the head chef Dave, and I felt like I was very competent in what I was doing. And I remember, again, similar to the story at the Black Stump, I was cooking on the trial grill, and I remember cooking mains at the summit, which I think at the time, for a second, third year apprentice doing that, it was unheard of. So I was, in my mind, I was like, fuck, I'm really, really good at this. My first week at Picasso, they let me know that fucking they put me back in my place without it was just a massive eye-opener, and I just sort of was so taken back of what a kitchen of that level, how it operated.
Was there a moment in which that happened, or is there a memory?
One of my first, or I could think there are a few things. I remember the first thing was within my first week, and Justin obviously did the pass all the time. He was there, and his wife, or his ex-wife, or his wife at the time, Georgia, she was running on the floor, and with him in classic Picasso fashion, and listen, obviously it was of its time. But I just remember he dished out a bollocking to his wife over the pass, and listen, I'm not going to repeat what he said, but it involved the C word numerous times, and it wasn't just a bollocking. It was it was a personal bollocking, about her appearance,
Oh, sure.
It was just there. It was it was a proper bollock, and I just remember seeing it oh my god, man, if this guy's talking to his wife like that in front of everyone, what the fuck is he gonna do to me? And I remember that. I still remember that feeling. But I wasn't. Listen, obviously I was nervous and scared, but I wasn't scared of it. I wanted to be in that situation, and I wanted to work for the best. And a part of me really almost got off on that, if that makes sense. I really enjoyed that high pressure, really intense environment, like an abused puppy, man. I just kept going back, I kept going back for more. But one of my first things, and this is going back into the first week as well, when I realized, okay, I'm a shit kicker here, is so Picasso was very fundamental on utilizing all the scraps.
Totally.
Justin was a chef owner, which is obviously a bit more common back there, but as a chef owner, trying to make money on all your scraps was quite a common thing. So we used to have an amuse bush, and just for an example, we had confit potatoes that you cut into a certain shape, and all the potato trimmings would get kept, where in most restaurants would get thrown out, and you'd just make a potato and herb velouté with all the herb stalks, and that would be an amuse bush. Anyway, the point I was trying to make, so there used to be lemons on pasta, and I can't remember, it was either I'm pretty sure it was the fish section would have lemons that would cut into quarters, and then you'd take out the little centered cheeks, so you had these little wedges that you sort of squeeze on the fish when they'd come out. Yeah. But they used to keep those little lemon center bits they had a bucket of water on the ground that had ice water and all the squeezed lemon bits that they used to just sort of drink from, like icy cold lemon water. Anyway, I remember I thawed out one day all those lemon scraps, and Justin walked past the bin and saw them in the bin, and he like sort of started up in the kitchen, who threw those out? And I was like, it was me, chef. And he goes, why'd you throw them out? And I just, man, listen, even though I knew, I just played dumb and said, oh, I didn't know, chef. And he knew I was lying. And he goes, right. And he grabbed me, took me to the core room, and he gave me a proper bollocking. And like, I remember like just walking out of there like shaking. Yeah. And just thinking like, fuck man, this is all this over just like, man, I don't know if you can quantify how much that lemon would have cost. You know, it was more so the fact that, you know, he caught me out lying and just wanted to sort of instill this sort of thing of like, nothing goes to waste here. Sure. And that sort of mentality was definitely instilled to me very, very early on in there. Yeah. And listen, I could have walked away any time. And, you know, there definitely were many moments where I did feel like walking away. But again, like I sort of had a lot of self-pride and wanted to sort of prove to myself that, yeah, this is really hard, but you know, I can do this. It's funny working in restaurants like that when you're very underqualified, because for a lot of the first early period, you feel as though you have more shit days than you do good days. Yeah. A good day is when you just don't get yelled at. Yeah. You know, but I feel like every day, like I went through the same thing where it was just like every day you made a fucking mistake. And it was just over something small, and that would just ruin you because you'd be thinking about it for the rest of the day. You're like, fuck, I know this. Why did I forget? They told me the other day, you know, and you beat yourself up about it. Yeah. And fuck, man, like it's a good thing. It just teaches you discipline, right? That's all it's teaching you. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think I love the growth, because I think the part of you is like, no, if I want to be around like these chefs that I admire, you get through the uncomfortability phase, you know? Of course. It was full on, you know, and I guess coming from somewhere like the Summit where we were working 50, 55 hours to go to the Cass where you're working 80 plus hours. Totally. You know, we were starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, finishing past midnight was quite normal, 5 days a week. And as someone who's sort of new to that, you know, the amount of times I'd sleep in and come into work late is like, it was the worst, because you'd wake up late at like, you know, 8:30 and you're like, oh fuck. And then like, you have this everything's so frantic and you're so tired, and like it's sort of there's all this commotion in the morning, and you're so stressed because you've gone into work late and you already know that you're an hour and a half behind your mise en place, and it's just going to be a horrible day. And everyone else is giving you shit. And Picasso was that sort of classic mentality where, you know, there was only like 2 pots, 1 spatula, you know, all the good equipment got taken early. So if you were there late, you got there late, then, you know, you'd have a much harder day. Yeah. A much harder day. I remember there was maybe a restaurant before as well. You wanted to tell this story because it reminds me of something similar. There was an entree to do with mackerel as well that kind of set the standard of the restaurants. I think it might have been at the Summit. You had an entree of mackerel, and if it was plated wrong, or it might have been the Cass, if it was plated wrong, you had to do the whole thing again. No, so this is Ledbury. Oh, this is the Ledbury. Yeah, so we'll get to that. Was Ledbury after the Picasso? Ledbury was after the Picasso, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, this is a good transition then. Well, Ledbury was quite a bit after the Picasso. I mean, obviously, I worked at Pier in between, but then I went off to do after my time at Pier, I went to work at the Ledbury. So it wasn't intentional at the time. Listen, I knew that I was probably 24, 25 at that stage, and I always wanted to like go abroad, work Michelin, you know, see what the outside world was. I was unsure of where I wanted to work in Europe, but I knew that I definitely wanted to work somewhere in Europe, and I kind of was trying to avoid London purely because of so many Australian chefs went to work in London, and they'd all work at different restaurants in London. Particularly Ledbury, and even though, funny enough, I went and worked there. But my intention was to go work in Spain, actually. Oh, wow. So I went and travelled. Obviously, I was in London, so I did a stage at the Ledbury. Listen, I really enjoyed it, but I was like, you know, I want to sort of see what else is out there. I had a stage at a place called Martin Berasategui, which is a 3-star in Spain. I had a 3-month stage line up. I did the first week there. And listen, I've been in restaurant situations where I've, been bullied, had the abuse fucking thrown at me, and I've always stood my ground. I've never walked out, but I walked out of this place. Well, listen, when I say I walked out, it wasn't purely the fact because they were arsehole to me or anything like that. It was just more so the fact that I did not enjoy that experience at all.
Really?
And I could not see myself putting up with that for 3 months.
Fuck.
To put it in a bit of context, Martin Barrett's and Tega was a massive restaurant. They probably would have had maybe 20 full-time staff, and on top of that there was probably about 20 to 30 stagiaires.
Fuck. When
I was staging there, we had all the stagiaires were in groups of dishes. So there was one dish which we looked after, and I mean, if you know Martin Barrett's and Tega, there's this famous dish. It's like a lobster with tomato jelly and all these sort of little intricate bits of herbs and garnishes and stuff like that, where the jelly's set on the plate. So on the section, we looked after that dish. There was one qualified or one chef de partie that looked after it with a team of 9 stagiaires.
Fuck.
And for service, it was the most boring as batshit thing. So essentially, we look after this one dish, and I kid you not, each stagiaire had one job to do on that plate. So for example, you had the plate was half plated before service, so the jelly was set. There were a few things that were on there which could sit on there for service and wouldn't deteriorate. But for example, one of the components was asparagus. So there'd be one chef, like a production line, who would walk through, put the asparagus on, and then walk off. The next chef would come through, and there were green almonds on there. They'd put the green almonds on, then walk off. Next chef walk on, do their thing, and so forth. So all service, all you're doing is putting on that one bit of garnish on the plate. And then when you're not doing nothing, you just had to stand there with your arms behind your back and just sort of
really
listen to service. Yeah, you're not allowed to talk. It's a very hierarchy based kitchen. They when we get stagiaires here at Sixpenny, we treat them like our family. We're welcoming them into our home. They're giving up their time to sort of to learn from us, and so when they're here, we make their time as welcoming as possible. But there was the very opposite. They treated stagiaires like shit.
That's crazy.
I remember once a chef, I can't remember what he did. He dropped a plate or did something naughty, and they punished him at the end of the night by making him scrub all the hoods. And I was the only. And I should mention as well, I was the only chef who could not speak the language. I think there was one other chef or stagiaire who was there for quite some time, so he was higher up in the stagiaire ladder. He could speak broken English, but other than that, no one spoke English. So regardless of my ability, I was already down the bottom because I couldn't speak the language. So, it was just very unpleasant. We were staying in dorms, which are little shoe boxes. So, I mean, I did a week. Prior to me staging there, I spent 2 weeks in San Sebastian, just traveling.
Totally.
Going all the Pinchos bars and going to the beach, man. And I had the best time. And after that week, I was like, you know what, fuck this. I did the week, and then the second week, I just didn't go back. I was like, fuck, I'm going back to San Sebastian. Booked a hostel and then just enjoyed another 3 weeks in San Sebastian. And then realized okay, well, this dream of living in San Sebastian, I can't do forever. I have to find work. And obviously I had the visa for the UK. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go back to the UK and try to find some work. There was a restaurant called Viajante, which I had stage at. Nuno Mendes, obviously he's got a few restaurants in the UK now. I mean, Viajante is obviously no longer there. But I remember that was my first choice of restaurant I wanted to work at. The reason being is, listen, I felt like at the time, even after staging at the Ledbury, I felt like the food that we're doing, even though it was done to the highest level, was still very, very familiar to me in terms of the cooking techniques, the processes from Bicas. Because it all stems down from Marco, right? All these great chefs worked to Marco. Marco sort of imparted all his knowledge. Phil Howard to Brett Graham. And then same thing with the bank guys, obviously Liam Tomlin had that sort of Frenglish training, and then it's filtered off all to the bank guys, and then it sort of filtered down to us. So I was already familiar with all the sort of classic French braising techniques, how to make puree. So it was that, all that sort of stuff wasn't really new to me, but when I started at Viaggiante, they just had a very different way of looking at things. You know, the classic way of making a puree in a Franglish style is like, you know, you sweat down your shallots or your garlic and thyme, onions, whatever it is, whatever you're making, salt to the soft and translucent, add your chopped veg, cook down, add your stock, puree, blend. But we're at Viaggiante, you know, they'll just completely look at a different way. Like for an example, I remember there was this like eggplant puree, and I could be a little bit wrong on how they did the process, but it was something along the lines, they used to brine the whole eggplants, then they used to deep fry them, and then they used to cold soak them in like this cold dashi.
Oh wow.
And then blend them, and then like they'd blend it with this sort of neutral flavored oil. And I just remember tasting this puree, it was so delicious. And it was just a sort of like, I didn't even think that it was possible to make purees like that. And just sort of really opened my eyes to sort of, there's a different way to do things.
Totally.
And not only that, they were using different ingredients. You know, they were a bit Asian-y, sort of like obviously just the dashi was one thing, but they were seasoning with soy.
Very bad.
Yeah, exactly. But like, to me, that was all sort of new. Like you would never see. Listen, I'm trying to think back my time at Bacas or even at Ledbury. Like, I don't think we saw any of that. I think Ledbury might have used like this shiso soy in this mackerel dish, which we'll probably talk about later. But at Bacas, definitely there was no soy. Maybe I think they might have used miso in something, like a miso. I think they cured salmon in like a miso sort of dressing. But other than that, there was none of that sort of like all those umami boosters and that sort of style of cooking. So my goal was Viaggiante purely because of the fact that like I felt like I would have grasped a whole new set of skills, a way to do things. But unfortunately, they weren't hiring. And listen, I needed it to work, and when I did my stage at Ledbury, there was a job there, so I went back and said, okay, well, I'm here to work. So,
I'm curious, just your experience at the Ledbury, because I was chatting to a couple of friends just recently about their experience, and was it the kind of place where like they wouldn't ever use tweezers? They used, like, for example, tweezers. Like, if you had pulled out tweezers, they'd tell you to get the fuck out of the kitchen. Like, it wasn't like that kind of style, but the tech, and it was also a place where like how everything was plated was not like overly super fancy, but it was a lot of like built like a lot of prep, technical prep. Is that kind of what it was like?
Oh, 100%. Like, so yeah, back to what everything said, there were no tweezers in that kitchen.
Totally.
Listen, I think funnily enough now there might be, I don't know, just because we had some...
That's a huge culture change.
Well, just because I've had a few chefs who have worked there, who've come through here, and they've told me, obviously asked about the stories and stuff like that, and they've told me that, there's tweezers there. Anyway, I guess the biggest thing that I took away from that place, and, you know, obviously everything was so mise en place heavy. There were a few sort of lessons that I took away from that place, and it wasn't more so the knowledge of the food. Like, obviously there were some things that I saw which I've taken away, but it was more so, one of the biggest things was embracing being in the shit and learning to work and know that you are not going to be ready for service, but that's okay. Like, I don't know if it was intentional, but that's the way it was there. I don't think my whole time I was there, I was ever ready for service at 12 o'clock.
Fuck.
Like, it was unheard of. And
just
like,
the thought of that gives me just like anxiety, stress, you know? But
it wasn't just me, it was like, it was a whole kitchen. Like, you know, 12, dockets started coming in, chefs are like still at the back fucking blending purees, and meat guys were fucking back in their proteins. Like, it was just chaos, but it was organized chaos. And I guess, and this goes back to Bacas as well, because Bacas was similar to that, but not to the same extent as what Ledbury was. But it was, you just had to embrace being in the shit and know that, you know, we were starting at 7 in the morning. And you would get there at 7 in the morning, and sometimes you'd even get there earlier when you were like extra busy. But it's funny, you'd step in at 7 in the morning and you like look at your prep list, or you already knew your prep list because you did it the night before, and you'd go home thinking about your prep list and what jobs you're going to do first to create your work. Like,
always,
you genuinely had to do that, because every minute you can save in that sort of 7 till 12 o'clock window is a minute that, you know, you're more ready for service. So your workflow was super important. So you would go home on the tube thinking about, okay, what job I'm going to do, and you'd be lying in bed, like, even though you should be sleeping, thinking about, okay, fuck, how I'm going to do this. So yeah, like it'd be funny because you'd rock up at 7 o'clock in the morning and you're like, okay, I got to do this, this and this. And like, I'm not going to be fucking ready. And like, obviously that would deter a lot of people, like stress people out, but you just got to sort of like know, okay. And you got to be selective of what jobs you can do. Like, okay, listen, I can manage this, this and this during service. You know, you'd always leave your little petty jobs like picking, chopping herbs. You know, you'd get all your bulk cooking shit out of the way, making all your purees, all your batches of stuff like out the way first. So like selective mise en place and workflow was like a big thing that I took away there, and like learning to sort of work in that sort of stressful environment, and like, you know, being able to cook, plate, and do mise en place all at the same time.
Totally.
All at the same time. And it's funny because you think of someone at that level wouldn't operate like that, but because, you know, I mean, here at Sixpenny, not all the time, but we are relatively pretty much always set for service. And when the first docket comes in, we're standing around waiting for that first docket. We're there as the complete opposite. And yeah, like, and I remember going back to the CAS, like the style of cooking, and back to your original question, the style of cooking was very different to what I'm used to now. You know, listen, obviously there it's a la carte restaurant. I mean, they did tasting menu, but it was a la carte and tasting. But it was a lot of a la minute cooking, like massive amounts. Even the CAS was all a la minute cooking. You know, going back to the CAS on the garnish section, I remember there was, you know, you'd be responsible for 3 or 4 dishes of the garnish. So fish section will look after, there was 2 fish courses, or 2 fish selections from the menu, and I think fish will look after their own garnish for their 2 fish dishes, but you look after the garnish for all the other hot entrees and all the other meat-based proteins that were on offer, and the vegetarian stuff. But you know, being an a la carte restaurant, if you were a table of 6 and they didn't order any fish, and it was like, you know, 2 beef, 1 duck, 1 lamb, and a vegetarian dish, and you're on the garnish section, you'd have 6 dishes they'd have to look after, and each dish would have about 3 or 4 different components that you'd have to do, and it was all a la minute cooking. Like here, you know, we have purees and sauces and that we sort of warm up and then hold in a bain-marie. So, you know, if you got to just, it's already done. It's one less thing you have to do in service. But there, you'd have to heat up the puree to order, saute spinach to order, you know, pan fry your carrots, make emulsions to order. Like, it was proper cooking.
That's fucked. That's
proper
crazy,
cooking. And you know, if you got 4, 5, 6 dishes times 3, 4 garnishes, you can imagine how much shit you got going on the stove. And you're just like fucking doing this. And I remember just like being absolutely covered in burns. One, because you're a young chef trying to learn how to cook. And you know, being quite clumsy. So it's, you know, back then you like, a badge of honor sort of shit. You go out for drinks and you show everyone your burns. But obviously, looking at it from an older perspective now, it's just sort of like, you were just a careless cook, mate. Like, you know, making a lot of mistakes. But it was hard, man. Like, and I'm glad I did that, because now, like, you know, the garnish section here, if they had to cook like that, obviously it's a very outdated way of doing it, because you know, labor costs are so high now that, you know, you can't afford to have that sort of style in the kitchen. You know, you just can't do it. And you want to streamline service as much as you can. So to sort of minimize things that are a la minute cooking, and like, you know, things that are sort of preserved, or like, you know, things that you can sort of heat up before service and just hold, you sort of do, just to make sure when service time is there that you can sort of purely focus on what you're doing, and the main things that are like the cuisson of the protein cooking and the fundamental elements. I'm not saying we don't do any a la minute cooking here, but it's definitely just 1 or 2 things as opposed to 3 or 4 different things. And it's different as well, because we're only ever focusing on 1 dish, not like 5 different a la carte dishes at once.
Fully. Yeah, I mean, look, that's been a huge change, man. I know that happened for a lot of the restaurants when I started. Even just at Caveau, let's say, for example, like, not as hectic as the Ledbury, but I just remember like little elements of having to do things very like last minute. There was never much in service. For even at Caveau, it was kind of on the larder, so there was not a lot of cooking, more just kind of cold entree, maybe some warm snacks, but it was never that crazy. But even I just remember, like, we had a prawn hollandaise that we had to make, like, and he would only make it at whatever the time service started, you know, because he's like, it can only hold for whatever 2 hours or whatever, the hollandaise. And you have to hold it under a heat lamp because it needs to be at 38 degrees, right? And it was just like such bullshit, because if you're in the shit stressing while making a hollandaise is the worst thing, because it's like you have to really pay attention to making a hollandaise.
You can't rush it, yeah.
You can't rush a hollandaise, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it was the most anxiety-inducing, just such a simple thing. And I remember even like a couple of times during service, it would be under the light, but you could see it start to split. And that was bullshit, because when you've already got plates on the after plate, it was only 3 of us in the kitchen at Cura. It's not a big place, you know, doing whatever, 40, 50 covers. But it was like, fuck, man, the moment you saw that split, it was like, oh.
Yeah, you just knew you're going to be in for a shit time.
Yeah, and I was just like, little thing. I know it wasn't as hectic, but it's just like, fuck, man, like, I just wish we could just do another sauce that would hold nicely, you know? Yeah. But it was just like funny moments. So you go from Spain and then you come back home after Spain?
No, so I stayed at the library. I was there for a year and a half. About a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
And my time was up there in terms of the visa.
Yeah, sure.
And listen, I was secretly, I was fucking so happy that my time was done there, because it was, like it, man, it was grueling. It was tough. I'm not going to deny that. And
actually, did you work with any chefs that are in Australia now during that time at the library?
Jason Saxby was there when I first started.
Oh, really? You worked together?
Yeah, yep.
Great.
Oh man, there's a chef called Ross who is in Melbourne now. Nick Hill and Billy Hannigan.
Yeah.
It was quite funny because they were there first, and then they left and came back to Australia to do some things, and I was there.
Yeah.
And then when I left, they both went back.
Oh, really?
So obviously I knew a lot about them, and we never crossed paths, but we knew a lot about each other, I guess. Listen, man, off the top of my head, there were some other chefs, but I can't quite remember because the turnover there was quite high.
Sure.
The turnover was very, very high.
Yeah.
It was a very hard kitchen. It was a very hard kitchen. And listen, I don't know what it's like now, but I mean, back then it was of its time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of aggression. It wasn't cutthroat. Like, people weren't trying to stitch up like you used to read up in Kitchen Confidential or anything like that, but it was more so the fact that it was quite cliquey.
Yeah.
If you weren't like in with the chefs, you're an outsider, you were definitely going to have a much harder time there. And I did see that a few times with the chefs who weren't shit, but got made to feel like they were shit because they weren't part of the circle. I like to think I was sort of in the circle for most of the times. I mean, I'm sure there was a few times when I was out of the circle. Like, obviously I was quite young, so I was a bit of a smartass once. I got a bollocking from one of the sous chefs. And I can't remember, I answered back, I said something like a smartass during service. And stupidly, let this be advice, don't answer back to the person who writes the roster.
Remember that. Yeah.
Good advice. So listen, as you know, the days were long. We were starting at 7, finishing after midnight. So it was like 17, 18-hour days, and we were open 7 days back then.
Yeah.
Monday to Sunday.
Sure.
So I used to work 5 doubles and have 2 days off. He, for 3 weeks in a row, made sure that my days off lined up. So I would have the Saturday, Sunday, then the Monday, Tuesday off.
Yeah.
And then do 10 days straight.
Oh,
and he did that for 3 weeks in a row.
Holy shit, that's a punish.
So you can imagine, like, by the 10th day, consecutively, I mean, I don't know, do the math, what are you up to, like a fucking 140, 150 hours? And you're just frazzled. But it's quite funny how, like, for anyone who's ever worked like that, you know that you sort of, by the 4th or 5th day, you're so tired, but you sort of go into this sort of like, your body just switches into this
zombie fucking.
Yeah, but this automated role where you sort of just like go home, have 3-4 hours sleep, wake up. Obviously waking up is like the hardest part, but once you're on the tube getting to work, you sort of slowly wake up, and once you're in the kitchen, you just switch on. Yeah. But by the 10th day, man, you're like, it's like you're on fucking mushrooms, man. You're so loopy in like days, and just everything's just like, you're hypo, like even though you should be super tired. It's like I related it to because obviously I had a young child, a little baby girl at home, and obviously when they're overtired, they show the opposite signs of being tired, and they're like running around the house going, that. Yeah. Sort of the same thing when you're overworked and tired like that. You're super loopy and crazy at work and like full of energy. But yeah, he did that to punish me, and he did it for 3 weeks in a row, and like I I didn't answer back to him anymore. Let's just say it that way. Yeah.
That's a good trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, good trick.
It was good, man. And like,
Yeah,
just,
beats the Cura bollocking.
and listen, obviously I've spoken about some negative things about that place, but again, going back to the conversation I said before, man, I wanted to be in that. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And I got off on it, man. I really enjoyed the fear of going into service. Like, you know, I used to be so anxious, and like, obviously I lost heaps of weight because people just weren't eating because I was just like full of anxiety. Listen, I know it's not the greatest, but I don't know, man. I enjoyed it, and I kept going back. You know, I had many opportunities to leave. You know, it wasn't like they forced me to be there. But like, I came back to Australia, and coming back to Australia, and I didn't really see it at the time. But as soon as coming back to Australia and working in my first restaurant in Australia, like the standards that they have there is like unbelievable. Like being an a la carte restaurant, you know, they had a table of 5-6 people, all on different entrees, or all on different mains, all on different things. So, you know, you'd get some things coming from protein, from meat, some things from fish, whatever it may be. And then just sort of, if you're coming up on the table of 6 and you're on fish and that fish was just a little bit overcooked, it would fucking get thrown back at you. The whole table would get redone again. And, you know, he would just not compromise on his standards at all. At all. And listen, it's shit when that happens, because not only you fucking got a bit of fish thrown at you and you copped a bollocking from Brett, but all your other chefs, you've just fucked up all your other chefs who have to redo that whole trick.
Fuck.
You know, it was hard in that sense of, you know, to be, and I guess that's sort of that whole thing of being inside and outside of there, is that, you know, if you fucked up a lot, then you'd be on the outside section because you're pissing everyone off. But his standards were so high, and he would not let anything leave the kitchen that wasn't how it's supposed to be. So yeah, man, I came to Australia and like just was like so shocked to the difference, where, you know, things here, I don't know if that's the Australian, like, you know, we're more laid back and casual, like, yeah, she'll be right, mate. Like, you know, I just think there's a fine line now, somewhere like where I'm running this place, you know, obviously I have high standards, but I think you need to make that key decision in the moment of whether is something worth redoing, or redoing it, is that going to compromise not only the kitchen, but all the other guests in the dining room who are going to suffer and wait. You know, so you got to make these split-second decisions. I feel like that comes with time of being a head chef and like your experience, and sort of make those decisions of whether things are passable or whether things get redone.
Going from the Ledbury, so you were there for about 1 year and 3 months, and the visa finished up. Where do you go next? What do you do next?
So I came back to Australia not really knowing what to do. And again, coming back with this sort of ego, you know, worked so and so, like, you know, I worked at the Ledbury for this amount of time, I can work anywhere. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I guess sort of what I did know was that, you know, I probably would have been about 26 at that stage. So I did know that I wanted to sort of maybe start moving into a more sort of senior role, and sort of start looking at the, you know, junior sous chef or senior chef de partie sort of positions. So I came back to Australia. A chef friend of mine